All right, hi everyone. Thank you for logging on so far. We're just going to allow a few seconds to start getting people flipping over onto the webinar. We've all been through it all the whole time this year, just waiting for folks to log on. So just give us a minute or so more. We saw so many people from Athena Health register for this event, and we're so excited to have you. I know Amy's proud of her organization, and then we also have Monique and Dethra here who are going to talk to y'all about building a strong virtual presence. And we're going to walk away and we're going to crush our end of the year performance reviews and really just show up in the new year with a lot more confidence. So as we're getting started, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about Breaking the Glass, who we are, and some ways that you can get involved. So my name is Elizabeth Lamb. I'm the partnerships manager for Breaking the Glass. Breaking the Glass is a women's career development and diversity inclusion initiative founded by Computer Future. So we're a brand within this recruitment agency. Computer Future specializes in placing folks in contract talent and Salesforce, mobile, web development, BI, and Adobe. So if you're interested in getting in touch with anyone from our organization about maybe building out your talent or exploring, whatever it is, I'm not going to push too much because I know we have a big company here today together. So anyway, I can give you all more information about that later. But essentially, it's very important to the team at Computer Futures to make sure that they're having a positive impact on gender equity within the tech space. As recruiters, they have a big responsibility. The first people looking at resumes, they're having tough conversations with hiring managers. So in order for them to elevate their initiatives to create positive impact, they wanted to create community spaces so that we can have conversations around it. So Breaking the Glass started as a grassroots organization in Austin. We would partner with Retail Me Not, Visa, all the local great tech companies. We're so glad that we can have Athena Health on this list as well. And now we are a national organization. This year we were able to kick off hosting events all still at home pretty much, but with partners across the nation. We're so happy to have two speakers from Atlanta here today. That wouldn't have been possible if we weren't in this new digital space. So yeah, thank you again for having us. Just a few rules before we get started. If you have any questions throughout the webinar that you'd like our attendees to answer during the Q&A session, there is a lovely Q&A box down at the bottom. So type your question in there. If you type it in the chat, I'll just send you a friendly reminder to move it to the Q&A box. And then, yeah, along the way, I will be dropping links to follow Breaking the Glass on LinkedIn, getting in touch with our speakers, and any other resources they might mention as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off and let the speakers get started and pass it over to our moderator, Miss Marla Brewer. Y'all have a great session. I'll see you at the end. Goodbye.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. Hey, everyone. I'm Marla Brewer. I'm a principal IT recruitment consultant at Computer Futures, and I've been with the company for almost 5 years now. I've partnered with BTG since it began about 4 years ago, and I love being able to connect my clients and candidates to our events and have such an awesome group behind us to network with. This year, I've started moderating panels, so it's been a good journey so far. And today, I'm going to be discussing how to build a strong virtual presence with our 3 speakers. I'll now have everyone introduce themselves. Amy, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Real excited to be here today. This is a great opportunity working with a great organization. So I'm Amy Flanagan. I'm very happy to know that so many Athenistas, so many women Athenistas have joined us today to hear this presentation, to hear this panel discussion. I've been with Athena for 3 years. I'm the Vice President of Engineering, and so very tech focused. Healthcare is a great space to be in, very welcoming and warm for women and encouraging. The company, we have a wonderful set of ERGs that are very supportive and helping people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds and different levels of ability to be engaged in our company. And excited to talk more about building a great virtual presence with you guys today.
Awesome, thank you. Dethra, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Mary. It's exciting to be with you all today. Excited to talk about something so very pressing in this environment that we're in right now. I am Dethra Giles, what I call myself the Chief Bridge Architect at ExecuPrep. I run the company, a performance optimization organization called ExecuPrep here in Atlanta, but we get to go all around the world helping people and transform organizations, especially around this very topic that we're talking about now as it relates to the diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, particularly today about women in this very important space that we're looking at right now. So I'm excited to speak with you all and get all of the information that's going to be coming out to you all.
Awesome, thank you. And Monique?
Yes, hello everyone and welcome. I am Monique Russell from the beautiful islands of the Bahamas and also Nigeria. It is a privilege and honor to be here. I have spent 20 years in the science of communications, and I started speaking from the age of 8 years old in front of a live audience. My company is Clear Communication Solutions, and pretty much what we focus on is helping women leaders and their teams to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood using public speaking and emotional intelligence. So if you are a woman building a brand, public speaking must be on your list. And I'm happy to talk about virtual presentation skills and what we need to do to be digitally relevant and present.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for these introductions. Before we get started on the first question, if you do have a question, like Elizabeth said, please submit it in our Q&A box and we'll get to them during the Q&A portion later on. So for our first question, what are the new rules of engagement for your meetings since moving into a remote setting? Dethra, do you want to take a stab at this first?
Sure. So I love that we're asking the question about what are the new rules, because what we have to recognize is that the old rules that we thought were in place are now shattered. Think the whole game has changed, and now we're having to establish a new set of norms for ourselves. But what I tell everyone is that the old norms haven't gone out of the window. So what we're doing is adjusting the norms that used to be. Showing up and being your complete presentable self, it still matters. So but that's changed a little bit. So now we're our showing up and presentable selves from the waist up. No one knows that. You don't know right now. I may have on a lovely pair of fleece jogging pants, but what you know is in this little square, I look amazing, right? So the rules are there. We just have to adjust. So no bonnets, no t-shirts, but still showing up and giving our full present self. Because in this environment, there's still ideas formulating. And I love one of the things that Monique said in her introduction. We are still building our brand. And so as you're showing up on these presentations, be mindful that your brand is still being formulated. So how I see you in this box directly impacts how I think my clients will see you, because they will also see you in this box. So making sure that we understand the rules are not all gone out the window. They're just having to adjust a little bit. Getting your brand voice, getting those imageries that we need to make sure people see and kind of initiates this idea of who we are in their mind. So adjusting, but not throwing away those standards that were already there.
I love that. Thank you. And then Amy, was there anything else you wanted to add for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sage advice, and some of the new rules are really, as you were saying, is still some of the old rules. Maybe you're wearing different lower half than upper half, but some of the standard rules that you have for any meeting, I think are pretty important. And that is making sure that you're really prepared, that you come and you're dedicating yourself to what you're doing. We all have other things to do. We all multitask, probably in in-person meetings far too often, but being really present and focused on the topic at hand, and not doing so much multitasking, making sure you're prepared for meetings ahead of time, and then you keep focused on that, is a real part of how you present yourself professionally, and can really help to have the most productive virtual conferences that you possibly can. And I think we'll talk about some more of the sort of forgiveness and breaks, and how you can make sure you bring your whole self in the later questions. But I think that's a big part of it also, is just making sure that you have a little bit of forgiveness of yourself. You take care of yourself so that you can be present, is a big part of how you make sure that you can be as successful as possible.
Thank you both. Kind of tying into our next question. So we've all noticed that during video conferencing meetings, that some folks might be distracted. So what can we do to encourage others to be more engaged and engaging? Monique, I think you had some really good advice for this one.
Yeah, so I know we were talking about this before we started, but in terms of being engaging, first of all, there's a ton of distractions happening. So for those of you that are watching right now, let's test your distraction meter, right? How many tabs do you have open on your computer right now? Just go ahead and drop it in the chat. How many do you have open? Because here's the thing, we know that there are multiple things that are going on. 14, 10, wait a minute, hold on, 12, Beverly. And so guess what? More than 2 means your distraction meter is so high. So when we're talking about engaging and being engaging in our online meetings or presentations, the first thing that we want to think about is really calling out the distractions. Calling out the distractions because we know we have them. They're internal, they're external. The dog is here, the kids are there, the husband is there. So really calling it out and really helping people to focus. The next thing you want to think about is being very brief. So in-person meetings may have taken an hour. Right now, you want to think about 15 to 20 minutes. People just don't have the capacity right now to have hour-long meetings, especially if there aren't multiple things that need to be addressed. So think about how you can shorten those meetings. It will help you get focused, get to the point, and then relax your expectations. So everybody's not going to have their camera on. Some people get tired. So you want to make sure that your expectations or what you're setting for people, it is realistic, and that will help them to be engaged because you're putting yourself in their shoes. So it's all about empathy. And finally, because we're in a space where, for example, you guys can see us and we can't see you, but you can see us and you can hear us. We can't even hear you. We can only see what you type in the chat. So using the other senses will help you to be more engaging as a presenter, using the power of storytelling. I've been a speaker for a very long time. And so one of the things I think before, ladies, we were talking about earlier is recently I competed in the Association for Talent Development Top 5 Master Trainer Showdown competition. Y'all really need to give me a hand clap because look, I didn't win, but I participated. And one of the things I talked about was using your voice, the power of your voice to engage your audience. If anybody wants to see a copy of that, just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll send it to you. But being able to be a storyteller when you bring in your meetings or help people to connect the dots, that's one way to keep them focused and to reduce the distractions.
Can I add any to that, Marla?
Oh yeah, please.
just picking up a little bit, because again, that's great. Storytelling, the way that we engage in person, virtual, whatever, in terms of presentations and meetings is people that are good storytellers always capture your attention. So focusing on how you do that and tell a better story rather than just sort of flipping charts, droning on is part of really mastering communications. I think another way that I would add to that that we've talked about in our private conversation is making sure that you're sort of engaging the other participants. Ask them for input. Have good pauses, and even ask people for their contribution. Finding those moments when you can really pull them in to your story will help to tell it better.
Awesome, thank you.
I wanted to chime in on that one too, Marla, because it made me think of, it's funny because I have a mug here that actually says it. And both Monique and Amy hit on this very profoundly. When we start talking about these meetings and how to stay present, especially if you're a leader, meetings have become the automatic answer. It's people's substitutes for not being able to be face to face. So we call a meeting and let's turn those cameras on. And I remember when we were in the office, we would have these crazy meetings and everyone would kind of look around at each other and we were all thinking the same thing. This should have been an email, right? The same is true for virtual meetings. And I have this because in a virtual meeting, you can always go, this should have been an email, without actually saying it. So as you're a leader and you're thinking about these meetings and how do we keep people engaged, don't inundate them. Don't make them a substitute for something that just can't be substituted. Ask yourself the question, as Monique and Amy said so well, do we have enough information to actually call a meeting? Is there something substantive to say? Or should this meeting have actually been an email?
I think I speak for everyone when I say we need a link to where you bought that mug, because that's awesome. I personally want that. Thank
Presents for my staff this year.
you. Oh, awesome. There we go. moodymugdays.com. We're going to, crash the website after this. And kind of going into our next question. So what has each of your favorite tools been for collaboration and brainstorming? Amy, if you want to start.
Sure. So I can speak for probably most of the people that work at Athena Health to say that Teams is definitely not our favorite tool, but offers a lot of value. You have to start with that. You have to start with, the video conferencing, some level of screen sharing, having the ability to have hands up for people so that you can make sure you're giving people their turn to speak. But really, in terms of actual good collaboration, a couple of tools that we've used very successfully, Mural is probably tippy top for really having a productive meeting. Great ability to be able to do, especially sort of like that whiteboarding with the sticky notes. It's a great replacement for that. And then tools that are built in, templates that help you sort of divide and conquer and ideate on complex and simple problems, forming vision, deciding what your priorities are. Personal use is also encouraged, but it's a really good high performance tool for that level of collaboration. And then more on the technical side, we successfully use Lucidchart a lot for whiteboarding. It gets kind of nerve-wracking at times to actually be drawing something on a screen and have the little sticky connectors moving all over the place. But this year we wouldn't have been able to do all of the work that we've done, from new security threat modeling to developing what our high trust posture looks like without that tool. So those are two that kind of come top of mind to me.
I can take it next. For my team, Slack it's the things that dreams of getting done are made of. It's so great for us because we're able to track what everyone is doing, and it does prevent us from having a lot of meetings, because the first thing everyone says is, okay, before we do a meeting update, just look in Slack and see where things are. So that's so helpful. But another communication tool that we use is an app called Voxer. And Voxer is so amazing because it allows us, and on my team, We only let other team members know that we're on Voxer. So everyone on here that's heard that I'm on Voxer, act like I never said that. It's top secret. It's a secret between you and I, and no one knows. So when it comes in, it's not like another ding. So I immediately know this is from the team member. Go and check it. And you know, those emails that kind of end up at the bottom of the list of 5,000 emails you got, or the text messages, then text messages now look like email boxes. Voxer is one of those things where I know it's only my team members, and it's a great immediate source of communication. It's almost like a walkie-talkie, but we love it and it's so great for us. So those are two tools that are game changers for myself and my team.
And I will reiterate too with Mural, because we've used that for design thinking. It's really good for brainstorming, collaboration. And I love to keep things simple. Amy, I'm like you. Teams is not on the top of my list either. No way, Jose. But Zoom is simple. Zoom is simple. It's so user friendly. I mean, we're here on the platform today. That just speaks volumes. But especially for calendar management, I use Calendly. Calendly is an awesome tool. It integrates with, different email platforms. You can set reminders, multiple reminders, text reminders, because people have so many things going on these days that it's just a courtesy to think about how can I help people to be more effective at their work using automation and artificial intelligence. And then because I work with a lot of people who are international, WhatsApp is great. And so I have a WhatsApp group, and if there's anything that needs to be addressed, especially if someone is working on social media or just, in general, we need to communicate really quickly, I'll drop that into my WhatsApp group because we're dealing with an international audience. So, yes.
Nice. Thank you everyone for your suggestions. I hadn't even heard of some of those before, so definitely need to check those out after. And moving on to the next part. So for client-facing roles, how can someone maximize their success for a video conference meeting? Monique, do you want to get us started?
Sure. So client facing, if you are facing your having a meeting with your client, I think that this is something that falls into the line of communication skills. So like we had in person, we're now online. There are some things that you really need to pay attention to and consider. The first thing is actually understanding your audience. This is going to make you have a much more successful outcome in your meeting. Because I think now the challenge with a lot of people is that how do I start to build a relationship with people online? How do I start? And most of the times people will Google you. They'll go to your LinkedIn profile. And if there's nothing there, you've already lost. So if you are client facing, you have to have a digital presence, have an updated picture in your profile, have a verbiage that can, give people information. But when you're meeting, and actually this is something that I walk people through. So you're understanding how to understand your audience, not just their communication style, but also their psychographics, really thinking about their beliefs, what values drive them. I have a tool that I use that people can take to do this exercise to kind of see where they fall, and it helps them to understand how others respond to their things too. But just making sure you understand your audience, having a focus for your meeting, having a very strong and clear focus, like what is the intention? What do we want to get out of this meeting? Start there so that you're now designing the interaction for that outcome. And of course, storytelling. And this is an area that I know a lot of people struggle with, because it's like, I don't have any stories to tell, or how do I even tell my stories? How do I position it? But your clients are people just like you. And so when we are able to pull in stories that help them to see how your product can help them, like putting them in a future state or helping them to envision themselves in that future state with your product using a story, it's just going to turn the result of your meeting. It's going to give you a much more effective outcome for your meeting. So I walk people through some of these things, like your audience, your storytelling. I have a whole system in my speaker's guide, And that system, I will tell you, again, if you're building your brand, you want to be able to know how to assess your audience, how to tell your story, how to deal with imposter syndrome. That's a big one that comes up. And so I can share my guide. It's an ultimate speaker's guide. It will help you to build your presence and to have more effective client meetings as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Dethra, looked like you were going to say.
And Monique has some amazing points. And by the way, that guide is awesome. So you probably want to get it. But another thing too is you want to try to create that face-to-face feeling as much as you possibly can. So one thing I've done with some of my clients that I would normally meet face-to-face with is very recently I did a meeting and I sent the client a question. Hey, what is your favorite drink from the local coffee shop? And they told me, oh, if I were out, I would love an XYZ. I just simply went on a food delivery app, ordered that drink to be delivered in time for our meeting. And so we literally had a virtual coffee, and not just a virtual coffee, but I had my tea, they had their coffee that was delivered, and they were elated about having this meeting just because I had a coffee delivered. Mind you, you could probably imagine I closed that sale without a problem, but it made them feel like we were sitting face to face, like we would literally be sipping this coffee together were we across the table from each other. And it's little things like that that give that feeling that you want for your clients, that you would normally engage with them face to face, because now clients are really sitting back and asking questions. What value do you bring? And part of the value that we bring are the relationships that we have, those stories that we're telling, the storytelling that both Amy and Monique have talked about. It's about how we make people feel. And if we can continue to make them feel as if we're face to face and make them feel as if we're connected in a way that typically comes from having that face to face interaction, it's a game changer for the relationship. So figure out ways to reproduce that feeling. It doesn't have to be ordering them a coffee. It could be do some low key stalking. Hey, saw your kids play the T-ball game. How was it? How was it being at a T-ball game in this pandemic environment? How far away did you have to sit from everyone? And people love to talk about things like that. Oh, it was great to get out of the house. Oh, it was great to ride my kids around the city just to get out. So remember to bring in that human interaction that people love, because that's what relationships are built on, which means that's what contracts and consequently promotions and pay raises and performance reviews are also built on. So finding ways to continue to make that connection.
Thank you. Some really good points. And if someone offered me a free coffee, I would sign whatever. So I love that idea as well. Amy, was there anything else you wanted to add for this topic?
I'm not blessed with the opportunity to interact with customers very often, but when I do, I do think the advice that really resonates with me the most is because I'm typically brought in as sort of technical expertise to speak about particular concerns or answer client questions, but keeping focused, making sure that I keep my answers understandable. Again, knowing your audience, answering exactly what they want and no more. Things that are true in person or remote, but especially while, again, we're so fatigued of having so many video calls, really helping them with that and answering the question precisely, knowing up front what they're looking for and really preparing to answer that. Is very important for the client interactions, at least from the sort of, technical advisor perspective.
Amy, really quickly, did you say answering what they want and knowing more, or nothing more?
And nothing more.
Oh,
really, it's, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, I thought you said knowing more. I was like, oh, I'm writing that down, answering what they want and knowing more. That's awesome. But no,
I think that's probably good as well. Again, that comes in the preparation. Make sure you know more than you than you even need to, so that you're prepared. But no, it's being concise. and answering the question, addressing that directly, and not really elaborating on more than they probably are interested in.
Oh yeah, I'll just jump in real quick, like seriously, because I think sometimes when we tend to go over and we're so excited, with this product or service, and they don't care about that. Like they just want to know, can you help me? And how can you help me now? So they don't need all the extras, just stay focused, give them what they need, nothing more. I love that advice too, Amy. Thank you.
And Amy, you touched on a good topic, which is video fatigue. Kind of a spin-off question. How do you guys best combat that video fatigue that happens to all of us at some point or another?
Well, this is my moment to plug something that I have I am not getting any benefits or selling, but I had noticed in this transition with so many more meetings that are video based that I was really getting fatigue and actually headaches from it. So one of the things that I invested in for myself is some blue light glasses. There's a lot of doubt about whether this really works or not, but firsthand testimony and some other people I know that have bought it. Probably if you believe it works, it works. But it has definitely made it so that I'm not ending every day laying on the couch with a terrible headache. I feel much better at this point. Just blocking that, having that shield a little bit, hopefully reducing some of the light that's really burning in your brain has definitely helped me. I also think that some of the advice that they give about how you best present yourself with the right light in the room, that also helps with your fatigue. If you have very, very bright screen and a dark room, despite the fact that some of us that like to write software in that environment think that's perfect ideal coding, it's really terrible for your eyes and for your energy level. So adjusting some of those things, making sure that you have good, comfortable light for the sake of your own your own energy level and your own ability to present your best self is very helpful. And the last thing I would say is the idea of taking sort of shorter meetings, 15 to 20-minute meetings. In between those meetings, pad yourself with some time to relax, rejuvenate. Don't spend all of it answering all the emails that came in while you were on that last call, but actually give yourself some time to rest, renew, rejuvenate, so that you're ready for your family at the end of the day, or for your next call, if that's what you're doing.
Thank you. I definitely need to add those blue light glasses to my Amazon cart, as well as the mug. So now I've got two things to buy. Dethra, did you have any strategies of your own that you've come up with to combat that?
Absolutely. So the first thing is I try to be a minimalist when it comes to things like this. Find ways to reduce meetings as much as possible. In this, and this is not just work related, this is all around in this quarantine environment. We have now turned everything into a virtual party, virtual happy hour, virtual baby shower, virtual bridal shower, virtual everything. So it's not just the work meetings that are killing us, it's all of these things that now have us zoomed into a screen. So here's the reality. You would have never gone to that happy hour if we weren't in this environment. Don't go now. You you don't even like them. Why are you making it to the bridal shower? Right? So reduce some of these meetings that we have now obligated ourselves to simply because we don't have to leave the house to attend them. Really be guardians of your time and your eyes, because what's really happening is our eyes are strained by having to look at the computer consistently, read smaller writing, have the light coming back on us. So the blue light glasses, they actually do work. I don't care what anybody says. Don't at me on this one. But do that, but also think about how can I reduce some of this time? Whether you're a leader and it's saying reducing that meeting. Again, I love what Amy said. We don't need 60-minute long meetings. Most oftentimes, 15 minutes is actually good enough, 10 to 15. Do it like you would have done a stand-up meeting in the office. If your legs will get tired, you've been in that meeting for too long. So I love how Monique does it. Monique is actually standing up at her desk now. Do your meetings actually standing up. And when your legs start shaking, you either know it was leg day this morning at the gym or this meeting has gone on for too long, right? And reducing the amount of meetings you're actually obligating yourself to in the first place. Those are lifesavers for you.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. This is so on point. I love the fact that you you said don't go to the bridal shower if you don't want to. So then we're getting into the whole aspect of boundaries and really healthy boundaries, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. Are you overcommitting? Are you listening to your body? In addition to that, the things that I would say, like Dethra pointed out, I am standing. So make sure that you balance your meetings. Everything doesn't have to be seated, because you sit down too long, you get sedentary for too long of a time, and then that fatigue just sits in your body. You feel so weighted. But if you're standing, some meetings you can stand, some meetings you can sit. And then another thing is, all meetings don't have to be virtual. So I remember just scheduling meetings and only using the audio conference. And I don't remember, I think it was last week, there was one meeting that I totally was not dressed for. I was not ready, and I was rushing around trying to get camera ready for this meeting. And as soon as I logged into my calendar, I was like, this is a audio call. I don't even need to turn on my camera. Turned off the lights. And so balance in between your video meetings and your audio meetings. Also make sure that you are getting rest. Your environment at home plays a big role in the fatigue, the meeting fatigue that you have. So start to think about even decorating with live plants, because those can help clear out the air in your room, help you have better oxygen coming in. And I know that this is another strategy that I've used. I've recommended it to my clients. It just creates a better environment. And you can even see, based on how your plant is performing, the amount of stress that's going on in the room. My plants, when I see they are blooming and they're bright and they have, I'm playing music, my plants respond really well to it. But if there's too much stress and tension, you can see that your plant will respond to that as well. So think about decorating with live plants as well to help you combat some of that fatigue.
And I want to come back on something that Monique said, if it's okay, Marla. She mentioned, varying, getting up, walking around, moving, and there's actually research on this. I can't remember the author right now, but they wrote a book called Desk Bound, and the subtitle is Sitting is the New Smoking. And it talks about the power that even if you work out and you're active, going to the gym and things like that, if you sit down all day, it's the equivalent of smoking cigarettes. And so being able to stand up, sit down, have a variable desk. I mean, some of the things I've ordered on Amazon, it cost me maybe 30, 40, 50 bucks. And it allows me to stand up with my computer, sit down with my computer, be at different levels, and just do that. You will be amazed at what it does for your body when you vary those activities and take a break every now and then. I just walk out, run up and down the stairs 3 or 4 times, and then come back to my desk. So making sure that you're getting that type of varied activity throughout the day is helpful as well.
Thank you. I love those ideas, especially with the quarantine, 15 happening right now. It's very important to get those steps in. And by the way, Monique, I love the flowers in the back. So that really just proves what you're saying. And moving on to the next part. So sometimes in order to be heard in a meeting, you need to interrupt gracefully. So what would be the best way to gracefully interrupt during a video meeting with your peers or leadership? Dethra, what do you think?
The good thing is, depending on what platform you're on, but most of them all have these tools. So interrupting is almost easier than it was when we were face to face, because you have these raise your hand tools, you have the chat function, you have all of these things that allow you to let everyone in the meeting know that you have something to say. And on Zoom, a big, like if you put your hand up, a big blue hand goes over your picture and everyone can see that you have something to say. And even like that, without even pressing the raise hand feature in Zoom, when I did this, everyone can see, oh, Detra's hand is up. She has something to say. So it's almost easier than it was before. I don't have to worry about talking over anyone or interrupting or hoping someone else will jump in before I do. I just raise my hand or type in the chat, hey, I have something to say when they're finished. And it's so easy.
I want to echo that, but add to it, especially for people that are leading meetings. And when it's your meeting, when you're sort of the moderator, making sure that you pay attention to that is really important. Because I know there's always someone in the room who's the loudest voice. Any meeting, virtual room, real, physical room, there's always someone who's the loudest and will talk and will interrupt and will make their voice heard. If you're one of the people who is less likely to do that, you're polite and you wait your turn and you having something important to say and you want to interject, it's important that when you're moderating a meeting, when you're running the meeting, that you're paying attention to that, whether it be me raising my hand right here or across any of the various tools. It's such an important tool to be able to take advantage of, to make sure that you are hearing everyone that has something to say and has something to add to the conversation.
I love it. I'm going to jump on and add to, right on in line with the whole leading your meeting. So set the expectation, set the expectation right up front. Hi, everyone. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to spend 2 minutes per person to go around and get your feedback. You can give them instructions on using the chat, on using the tools, on practicing using the tools. And just like Amy said, there's always someone who's a loud person who has, well, I wouldn't say loud person, who's really excited to share what they have to say. And so setting expectations right up front, it just makes it easier for everyone. You want to think about over communicating because in a virtual space, sometimes people's internet connectivity may be different. So they may miss certain things when you are actually communicating. So make sure that you have those things in the chat. You drop that in the chat, but you also use that verbally to say, this is what we're going to do. These are the expectations. You can set your agenda ahead of time, making sure that people who need time to process and who are not active brainstormers in the meeting, they have something to say and they want to contribute, but they're just not in the style of communication where right on the call, they're going to come up with something to say. So you want to really make sure that you think about everybody in the room, giving them time to speak. And at the very least, if you're the host, you can always mute them. They talk too long. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm just kidding, but you can mute them.
Thanks, everyone. I love that last point about the mute. And last question before we actually get into the Q&A portion. Outside of video meetings, what are some ways to make yourself more visible in your organization? Amy, what do you think?
That's a great question, and some of the ways we've already discussed. Using the power of email instead of just always having meetings, having chats. All of these tools that we've mentioned, whether it be Zoom, Teams, Slack, the winner in this category, you have the ability to reach out as well as you could just walk up to somebody and engage by sending them sort of a simple note on the side and just reaching out and having a quick conversation or leaving them sort of an appreciation there. As far as sort of making yourself more known, having more of a presence, I do think having some level of a social media presence, if that's an internal or an external tool that you have available to you, being engaged there is really important. Part of what we do in Athena Health is we have really focused on this social presence and tied some of our internal communication snippets of information that you could share out with your network. We've made that easy one-click kind of sharing. And that both gives you visibility outside, raises the profile of your company, but also gives you some presence on the inside. This one here is sharing a lot of important information with their network. They're really present. They're a real advocate for our company. Those are some things that come to mind for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Monique?
Sure. So I definitely love those aspects. And I think that there's so many other ways too that you can look in your organization to see what are the initiatives or what are the things that align to you in your own mission or purpose, things that you're excited about. I remember working with a client and she wanted to gain more visibility, although this was when we were actually meeting in person. And it was very hard for her in her immediate organization. But one of the things that we found that she liked to do was this care package thing that they would put together and send for veterans, military people overseas. And so this is something she always used to do, but she was, sporadic. It's a volunteer thing. It's not, something that it's part of your job description, but she was passionate about it. And she found regained enthusiasm, knowing that there were so many other people that she could network with and gain visibility outside of her main organization. And when I say organization, her department within the organization. And they did a challenge. They did a challenge to raise funds. And as a result of that challenge and her being visible in that volunteer role, the CEO recognized her. And that was something that she would have never had experience had she not think differently or creatively. So I would say, look at avenues within your organization that align to things that you're already passionate about and have a presence. Yesterday, I did a keynote speech for one of the IT organizations here. And something that they have that's really innovative is a corporate podcast. Oh my goodness. A corporate podcast. And so their podcast, which is so innovative, it focuses on the diversity and inclusion that they're expanding in their organization. And I challenged people to go raise your hand and volunteer. That's another way for you to be interviewed on your company podcast. They're going to put it on the company intranet. It's just another way to expand your visibility and your credibility. But if you get on the podcast and you don't know how to tell your story, you don't want to be visible and flop. Nowadays, people don't have the patience. So you want to get your story right, because if you become visible online and how you step out online is something that is just bland and dry, or your story doesn't connect, or it's not engaging, it can actually do more harm than good, because people are moving to the next nowadays. They're not as patient as they were. So you want to make sure that you get that story and your process and your messaging right.
So I definitely want to chime in on this one. And Amy and Monique gave some amazing points for you all. Here's another area you can think about, though. This virtual environment has created a whole new set of issues for organizations, whether it's from employee engagement to connecting with vendors or customers. If you are the person that solves problems, your visibility elevates. So really identify, okay, what are the new issues that we're facing? What are some of the problems that this virtual environment or this quarantine environment or this pandemic environment has created for the organization or for my division or even for my current leader? And sit down and figure out how to be the solution to those problems, or how to present solutions to those problems. When you begin to be the problem solver, people pay attention, because everyone in that organization is there to solve a problem, whether it's the customer's problems or how we as an organization address the customer's problems. So when you come up and you say, hey, I'm a problem solver and I have an amazing solution, your brand begins to elevate. So I would tell everyone, I tell this to my clients, sit back and do some very hard thinking about, okay, my boss, our customer, what are the problems we're facing? And how can I be the solution? That may mean reaching out to Monique and saying, hey, I need to be able to tell my story better. And Amy saying, Amy, can I sit down with you for a second? Because we don't really understand these technical issues. And I want to better understand it because we're having a problem. And I think if I understood something, listen, Amy does this. She's amazing. She would love nothing more than to geek out with you about this tech stuff, right? And you go to her and say, Amy, I want to know more about it so I can help my department. Amy's like, pull out the mural. We're doing this right now. I'm going to help you build your brand. And even Monique said, hey, this company had a podcast. And what some of you thought was, my company doesn't have a podcast. But the people who are changing their brand, what they thought was, my company needs a podcast, right? See the difference between the person who is there and says, okay, this is how it is. I can't do anything because we're in this pandemic environment versus the person that says, in this pandemic environment, there's still a problem that I can solve and I can elevate my brand. Be that other person.
That was wonderful. Thank you all. That's really good advice. And before we come to a close, we want to switch over to the Q&A questions. So if you still have a question, it's not too late. We have 2 to go through. So for the first one, on the personal brand development topic, when disruptions occur when we're working at home, the dogs, the kids, etc., is it better to acknowledge it in the meeting and move on? I find many more women than men apologizing profusely for family interruptions, and I'm not sure if that inadvertently undermines our personal brand at work.
So I'll jump in here. So absolutely acknowledge it. This is like, I say, imagine that you have to go to the restroom and you are just ignoring it. Eventually, you're going to have to acknowledge it. So the faster you acknowledge the distraction and just, continue on with your day, it's just a part of life, then you are presenting yourself in a way that, yes, these things are going on and I've addressed it and I can focus back on what it is that I'm doing, as opposed to pretending that it's not there. Your emotions are starting to boil up inside because you're like, oh my God, Daniel's knocking at the door. I hope they can't see him coming in, So put yourself on mute, acknowledge what's going on. And in fact, we were talking about this earlier with that, the guy, I don't even remember what news network it was, where he was on that video conference call, CNN. Yeah. And he had the call and his child just rolled in and his wife, scrambled to get the child out. And it was hilarious, but today it's like, it's no big deal. The thing is, the question is so fantastic because this actually goes into a deeper area of self-awareness. I'm also a facilitator with Google's I Am Remarkable program, and that's specifically focused on helping women to overcome the challenges of self-promotion. So we've been socialized, we've been oriented to play it small, to shrink, to not acknowledge, to worry that if we say sorry, this is how we're going to be perceived. And it's not something that just came out of thin air. There's a lot of data and a lot of research that has gone into this. So my whole suggestion to you is really get yourself a coach. Get yourself a coach, have someone on your team who can help you think differently, see things strategically, build your confidence, and be able to speak clearly and effectively in the moment when distractions do occur.
Oh, I raised my hand and there, Marla was like, I saw that hand go up. See how that worked? I completely agree with Monique on this one. And the other thing is, I want us to be clear to make the distinction between being apologetic and self-deprecating. And what often happens is, instead of being apologetic and acknowledging, we're self-deprecating. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I thought I locked the door. And oh, I can't believe this kid came in here. Do what everyone else does. Press mute, shoo the kid away and say, I don't know why that kid came in here. Back to our meeting, right? And acknowledge it. I remember I'm a college professor and I teach online. And a long time ago, I had my office set up differently. And we're a martial arts household. My husband's a black belt, and we have this big dummy called Bob. And Bob was out in the hallway, but the way my camera was angled, it looked like this big guy was leering at my door. And so I started noticing that none of my students were focusing. And finally, I get something in the chat that says, Professor Giles, are you okay? And I'm like, of course I'm okay. What do you mean? And they said, don't turn around. But there's this man that's been standing at your door in the dark for like an hour. I had to acknowledge that that was this thing, but they were so distracted. And all they needed for me to do was to acknowledge that something was there. That's the same when your dog barks or our loving fur babies leave the door open. They decide, hey, I sit in your lap every other time. I don't know you're in a meeting. Who cares you're in a meeting? That's my lap. Acknowledge, I don't know what's going on with Joe today. Give me a second to get him out of here and I'll be right back. So be apologetic, but not self-deprecating.
Yeah, I mean, and we're all going through it. Everyone has, it's whether it's a dog, a cat, kids, Bob the dummy lurking behind you. There's always something, and you acknowledging that quickly, simply, not only clears out the question, but it also helps to humanize. We're all going through the same thing. We all have our fair share of distractions. Ignore it, probably not going to work. But apologizing for it, that's not something that women need to continue to do so much of. But on the other hand, don't apologize for apologizing. We're polite people, and we were brought up right. So acknowledge, and it humanizes you, and find a way to sort of pivot and turn back on after that.
Awesome. Thank y'all. And then final question. I know we've kind of touched on this already. How to make yourself heard in a meeting with others who have a stronger presence and more vocal.
And I'll chime in on this one really quickly because we did hit on it. But the other thing is oftentimes when people ask this type of question, it speaks to them really being uncomfortable speaking up. And here's what I tell everyone: hope is a great campaign slogan, but it is a horrible career strategy. And we cannot hope someone is going to ask us to speak up or hope that we're encouraged to give our ideas. We have to be continuously and intentional about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And so we have to push ourselves in a meeting. For those people who normally don't speak up and they're looking around like, oh, everyone has better ideas than me. Number one, they don't. And number two, find something substantive to say at each meeting and push yourself. The more you push yourself, the first meeting, something small. The second meeting gets a little bigger. And before you know it, you are that person that's having to tell yourself, you know what? I probably have spoken too much. Let me fall back. But become comfortable being uncomfortable. But you have to speak up because no one else is going to ask for your voice. You need to insert it where it's needed.
Love that so much, so much. Challenge yourself step by step. And another thing I'll just add really quickly is just really think about the strategy. Dethra talked about being intentional. So the strategy of how you get your voice heard, meaning like, Amy talked about preparation, but then using questions to interject, being very curious. Have you considered this? That's something that really gets people to slow down and think really strategically about whatever it is that you're proposing or presenting. And so even if you don't have a time to vocally interject because you're on Zoom, you can ask your question, make it known in the chat, make it known in the chat that you have that question and place it in there so that that moderator will be able to say, okay, you know what, Amy, you raised the point about, us thinking about whether we need to go to yoga retreats. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? So be very strategic and intentional about how you're going to get your message heard or how you're going to contribute to the conversation. And it's not always verbal. We communicate non-verbally. We communicate in many other ways. make sure that you're thinking about how you've already built relationships or how you can build relationships in the organization. And that goes into your networking 101, networking 102.
Now, these are both great. And I have almost nothing to add. I just want to sort of lop on to the practice, because it's a general principle that makes you successful. Great coders in my world, software engineers, are not born. They practice hard. You practice at your craft. How do you become a great communicator? You practice. You put yourself in situations. You challenge yourself to actually ask the questions, to be vocal in a meeting, and you start small and you build over time. That's a great key to success for almost anything, but it applies equally so in communication. Most people aren't just born with it, despite maybe Monique at 8 years old giving big, maybe you had
even then 20 years of experience and still
Exactly.
building the craft.
Yeah, just knowing that everyone still, Monique with 20 years of practice, I have a long history in leadership. I'm nervous every time I pipe up, but you practice, you build your confidence, you gain the ability to sometimes ask the question and it's not the right question, or but you sort of trust yourself, you trust your instincts, you know that you have something important to add, something important to ask, and believe and just go for it. But small baby steps in practice will lead you to success.
I just want to say really quickly, the fact that you're on this call today is a small step. That's a win. So that's something to celebrate, because you're getting the strategies, the techniques, you're learning, you're constantly growing. So that deserves kudos and celebration in and of itself. And for those that have asked questions, that's even a bigger celebration. So kudos to you.
Yeah, that was a great question to end on. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and to all of our panelists for joining us. I'll pass this back to Elizabeth for our closing remarks.
Yeah. Thank you, Marla, and thank you to our speakers. I say this at the end of all my webinars. This is the one moment where, I really do wish we were in person together so we could have that round of applause moment and really be able to thank the speakers. We appreciate you all for logging on. We appreciate the speakers for taking their time to share their wonderful words of wisdom with us. And we hope that you all have a wonderful afternoon and rest of the year. And, thank you again. I sent our contact information through. So if you want to get in touch, build your network, get connected, continue these conversations. Okay. Y'all have a great one. Bye.